Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the Dark Elves led by Norsca and Lokhir Felheart facing off against a House Cat of War who's going to be coming in strong with the big old wall of Marauder champions and Wulfric the Wanderer. Now, as far as this Dark Elf build goes, something I'm very curious about is going to be the performance of the Sisters of Slaughter. Now, these units on paper are basically designed to annihilate lightly armored troopers, right? Super high defensive stats, good weapon strength overall, good poison. So if they're fighting against like Marauders, maybe Marauder Berserkers, their high melee defense can kind of keep them in the fight in tandem with their physical resist, and they'll have good enough offensive stats with poison and their high weapon strength, which is almost 40, to grind down the chaff. But what I'm really curious about is the grinding potential of this unit against the Marauder Champion. Marauder Champions obviously are pretty heavily armored and durable themselves, but we do see a whole front line of these Sisters, and in theory, just kind of looking at it, I feel like they would, struggle against the Marauder Champions, but considering how high their melee defense is, their poison and physical resist, as well as this ability to trial up blades, which we're not currently seeing applied to their stats, maybe it could be a little bit of a different story. So yeah, very curious to see how these Sisters do. Lokhir Felheart going to be coming in with the Helm of the Kraken, so that is the item that heals him, and then he does also have the Merciless Slaver, which is -6 leadership. Not bad, leadership stuff can always be okay under the right circumstances. Granted, Norsca is really high leadership. Blackheart Corsairs in the backfield, and we do have some Shades with dual weapons. I do like this choice. They pack a heavy punch against any of the bigger threats, and even Marauder Champions, against some of the monsters. And if they have to fight chaff units like Marauders or Hound units, which are often going to be sent after them, they can fight them off a little bit better. Granted, you'll often see the Ice Doggos, which I believe are a large size, so maybe the swords won't matter as much, but that's going to be it for the Druchii army. Whole battle line of the Sisters with Blackheart Corsairs in the back, Lokhir, and some Shades. Now for House Cat of War, looks to be pretty standard rank and file Norsca. It's going to be Marauder Champions and basic Marauders. Always a good idea to have some basic Marauders out in the front. Just let them absorb any of the skirmishing, repeater crossbows, and then have the big champs get in there and grind that sustained combat, which is very good. Marauder Hunter Javelins, and it is going to be your boy Wulfric living in the bushes here with a Meadowcaster, no Firecaster. Yeah, Burning Head's pretty good against Dark Elves, so oftentimes you'll see Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, and then the heavy damage will come from the monsters or Malekith or repeater crossbows. So having something to clear out the chaff is going to be nice. And Burning Head plus Wulfric Seafang is going to be incredibly nasty against the Sisters. I mean, they're lightly armored, and yes, they have physical resist, but those magic damage, high DPS against light armor abilities are going to be very nasty against them. So we'll do some fast forwarding while the two players posture on the objectives. I'm really curious to see what Lokhir can do. I mean, he's kind of like a bit of a Walmart Sigvald type character, but what does he do that Sigvald doesn't? Like, he's not shielded. I guess he's got the bonus for his infantry, but Sigvald just seems better in like every way, basically. But yeah, Marauders are going to get smashed here pretty hard by the Sisters. This is going to be a very one-sided fight. We do see some horsemen from the House Cat on the other side going in and putting a little bit of poke down. A mischarge opportunity here for the Dark Elves. Oh my god, look at that nastiness. Oh, the Seafang and the Burning Head. The Wombo combo, and that one unit of Sisters gets eviscerated. And just like I talked about, like, they're very, very glass cannon. Holy shit, that was brutal. And the other one goes down the pipe, and talk about a rough start here for the Dark Elves, huh? Sisters of Singing Doom in the back, and on the rest of the map, it looks like the Dark Elves do get an okay trade over here. So one unit of Marauder Horsemen does get ambushed by these Shades, and it's pretty much instantly killed, but I would say House Cat of War certainly pulled ahead here, but now we're going to be seeing the Burning Head going back into the Norscans, although that one doesn't quite have as devastating as a wake. Yeah, it kind of goes through the Javelins a little bit, but for the most part, that was certainly quite scary. Now, Lokhir fighting Marauder Champions backed up by Sisters. Here in the hills, we do see Wulfric getting back there and trying to shut down the Shades up on the high ground, but the Shades are intercepted by the ambushing Sisters of Singing Doom, which are pretty good at killing lightly armored units. And what's really nice about them is they rampage the targets that they're fighting. So if you're in a situation where somebody's like aggressively chasing one of your units, it's a really good peeling piece. It can get that unit off and free up your missiles in the back. So the Shades are back online. Looks like they're going to be shooting into the Norscan Ice Doggos here as Wulfric and the remaining Sisters of Slaughter try their best to fight, but their numbers are pretty low. But the Sisters of Singing Doom also cause terror, so they can get terror routes on things like Marauder Champions. And now we do see the Norscan Ice Trolls coming in. So Norscan Ice Trolls are really good. Very kind of similar to the Warriors of Chaos and Armored Trolls in terms of functionality. Reasonably durable with 60 armor, regeneration, they hit hard, they got frostbite, what's not to love? Norscan Ice Trolls are a great, great unit. And honestly, a lot of my inspiration for playing Warriors of Chaos was from seeing these top players using Norscan Ice Trolls and kind of feeling as if Warriors of Chaos could do something similar. Now, this objective being grinded pretty hard here. Sisters of Singing Doom against Marauder Champions. Not the best trade, but the Flaming Sword of Ruin is active. Good to put him up to 57. And here you can see the Marauder Champions are slowly being worn down, but overall I think that Norsca might have a little bit of an advantage on this fight. Now, out in the open field, we do see the Blackheart Corsair Handbows and basic Black Arcs engaged up in the front line. Some Doggos moving in. Beasts of Tashnar are going to be charging into Sisters of Slaughter. A little bit of a misplay there, as I think the Sisters will outtrade them pretty heavily, and it looks like there's going to be a nice Burning Head coming in here from the Dark Elves. There it goes right down the pipe, and it does go right through those relatively expensive Hound units and does quite a bit of HP damage, also to the point where they're almost breaking. On the backfield, cavalry coming in, the dreaded Dread Knights. Norsca going to be calling in more Marauders, more Javelins, and some Hounds as well as Wulfric. Where did he go? Okay, Wulfric's over here and is going to be getting attacked by the Dread Knights. And Dread Knights can certainly, I mean, if they can get a good surround on Wulfric and really get that circle beating going, they could definitely drag him down. Dread Knights hit super hard and also are a very nice tech against the Marauder champions. Dread Knights have huge armor-piercing values, really good melee attack, pretty much everything you need to drag down a Marauder champion unit. Currently looking at the value, House Cat of War did come off to a really nice start, got those beautiful vortexes, so understandably his value is pretty far ahead. But here we see a nice engagement for the Dark Elves as they get a full surround on two relatively expensive Norscan units and should be able to get some good grind in there, unless they are opting to retreat with these cavalry. I'm not sure, it's a little bit hard to tell. Lokhir getting clubbed by the trolls. Shades still throwing some shade in the backfield, so we do see one unit of Shades online, second unit online as well. And here the Norscan Ice Wolves do get pounded by some heavy focus fire. And now a nice burning head going to be going right down the pipe, so the dreaded full line, the bowling alley. These Norscans lined up like bowling pins as they get roasted, and my goodness, that one takes the perfect rotation. It literally just kind of followed their formation and instantly shatters that unit. So it looks like the Dark Elves starting to get a little bit of momentum back. However, that initial loss has been pretty tough for them, as this objective has been firmly held by the forces of Norsca. Lokhir Felheart doing Sigvald things, just kind of anchoring on the point, but again, it looks like he's getting a little bit worn down. I believe his heal is 0.10 per second, whereas Sigvald's is 0.20. So Sigvald's healing is quite a bit more powerful than his, but, you know, comparison for another day. So the back objective, Shades still shooting in here. We do see the Shades with dual weapons fighting up in the front against Marauder champions. Not the worst trade in the world. I mean, you know, it could be worse. They could be Shades without dual weapons, but at least here they do have that bonus versus infantry. But obviously Marauder champions, one of the best infantry units, in my opinion, in the entire game. Going to be able to hold it down as Seafang comes across and rips through those Shades. Really nice play. Man, House Cat of War has been so on top of those targeted abilities this game. The Burning Heads, the Seafangs, all those different things, man, just yielding huge dividends for sure. So Blackheart Corsairs heading to the objective, doing a little bit of kiting, as we do get the Crows of Cain descending upon the Trolls, trying to get a rear charge on them and break their leadership. But it looks like the Trolls were able to stabilize. Lokhir still grinding, probably has gotten about 500-600 value, I would guess. Yeah, about 650 value, which isn't bad. Lokhir with his bare bones kit on foot costs, I think, like just over 1,000 gold, so it's really not the worst. But Norsca is getting kind of pushed back on some fronts. We do see some Bleak Swords heading over to this point to try and ninja that. Granted, the Norscan Sphere should be able to kind of intercept them, and with their current health and Javelin support, I would anticipate that these Bleak Swords probably will lose that fight. So if the Dark Elves want to get a comeback, they're going to have to win over here on this side. So the value discrepancy is about 2,000 right now. Lokhir has been healing over the course of the game, so that is something to take into account. Granted, Norsca does have the Troll healing, and it looks like there's going to be another Burning Head going down in the distance. Nice Burning Head right there, does kind of tickle those Shades. Those Shades have been on death's bed for some time, but still have a little bit of punch to give as more Corsair handbows move in, and we do have a duel of fates between the two characters. So Lokhir bravely running away from Wulfric. Wulfric could be using the Hunter of Champions and doing glorious battle here with the old Sea Pirate. Lokhir Felheart, not a bad fighter, but he is bonus versus infantry. Wulfric is definitely a superior duelist in this situation, being heavily armored, as well as the Hunter of Champions debuff is going to make him very strong. Granted, Lokhir, does he have any support nearby? Doesn't really look like it. Crows of Cain up on the side. Oh, but another Sisters of Slaughter coming in with the Flaming Sword of Ruin. Talk about a hammer coming in here. So Flaming Sword of Ruin is going to make them tear apart Skin Wolves, and you can see the Skin Wolves going to be running for the hills as these Sisters do saturate in and start to put a bit of a beating down on the Marauder champions that do remain. And Lokhir, you know, he didn't hear no bell, man. He heard me talking some smack, but it looks like he is going to be breaking here. Wulfric at 1,700 HP. Might be able to get the kill on Lokhir. This objective still being held by Norsca. I don't know how they have the capture weight here, though, right now. I guess Wulfric. Plus, there are some Marauder champions here, as well as the Shaman Sorcerer is maintaining the capture weight. Crows of Cain coming in for a bit of a sandwiching charge, which is quite strong. That's going to be pinning many of these Marauder champions to their doom. And these are the Marauder champions with the great weapons, which are maybe a tech piece against, like, Corsairs, or Hargoneth Executioners, or Blackguard, or something like that. But here, the Sisters should pretty much dominate them in combat. I think the big melee defense is what gives the shielded variant more of a good fight against Sisters. Plus, they're also, you know, being rear charged by Crows of Cain. So we do see Wulfric being unsummoned. Very conservative play here for sure. Perhaps to resummon him, which isn't a bad idea, because then you can get him back, and he has additional Seafang charges. Here on this side, we do see the Dark Riders using a little bit of a roadblock technique to keep the Norscan Ice Trolls and Condom Wolves from moving over to the point, as its objectives does start to flip to the Dark Elves. Value discrepancy still about 2,000, but Lokhir has been healing. And it looks like over here, did the Dark Elves get their momentum? It looks like they did. The Bleak Swords do finish off those Marauders, and the Blackheart Corsairs with handbows really showing their mettle as they do rip apart the Javelins. Pretty much a hard counter. Javelins don't really have good armor piercing, and they're designed against large, and Blackheart Corsairs have 80 armor and do considerable damage in both melee as well at range against the Marauder Hunter Javelins here. So side objective is taken by the Dark Elves, so the point discrepancy is pretty substantial here, but we'll certainly keep tabs on that as the Dark Riders, backed up by some Blackheart Corsairs, look to grind down the Condom Wolves. And Condom Wolves, they regenerate and are somewhat durable because of their regeneration, but they only have 15 armor, so even like lightly armored, skirmish cavalry and these type of infantry like Corsairs can do some decent incremental damage on them. So looking at the Sisters of Slaughter, they perhaps have delved too greedily and too deeply as they do move into enemy territory and they do begin fighting against Marauder champions, but they want to be in sustained combat against good quality troops, and you can see they are putting a good dent on this newly summoned Marauder champion unit. So really got to try them out myself. That's pretty cool to see. Looking at their value, only about 700, but the Dark Elves are certainly back in the menu as they have secured the objectives, and if the Dark Elves can hold the 2 objectives for the rest of the game, as it currently stands, they would win the game. So they just need to hold this double cap. It would be very, very close, but it's certainly possible. Sorcerer of Fire, chasing down these Marauder Horsemen here. We're going to get another Dark Rider charge moving into the back, and they do get a nice sandwich on those Marauder Horsemen. And yeah, they're going to be taking a beating. Dark Riders, pretty good in combat. I don't think the Murderer's Prowess is... Oh, it just procced. Okay. So the Dark Elf army getting a massive steroid buff. Everything in their force, if you guys don't know how this works, as Dark Elves get essentially, I believe it's based on kills. Yeah, it's based on kills. They please the god Cain, and they get a huge combat buff across their entire army. Leadership, damage, vigor, all sorts of good stuff. So it's going to be making these Corsairs fight way above their pay grade and many of those other units. So cavalry maneuvering in, Dark Riders still screening back the forces of Norsca, and we do see Corsair handbows moving up. I have like no idea how the Dark Elves got the momentum back in this game. I think a lot of it was the Shades, just getting a lot of favorable missile trades. Here we see a Feral Manticore coming in for the Dark Elves. Always a good choice. I feel like if you're a faction that has access to Manticores, they're such a good, cheap, cost-effective monster that causes terror. It can snipe characters, it can bunker bust positions that don't have immune to psychology. I feel like you should never leave home without bringing a Manticore. Just one. Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, Dark Elves, whatever. If you can bring one Manticore, you always should. I just feel like they're such a good utility piece for, 800 gold? Yeah, it's quite the steal. This objective under threat from the Dark Elves as well. Blackheart Corsair handbows going to be circling around the Norscans and getting a nice rear charge. Very, very good usage of the Dark Elf mobility. Blackheart Corsairs are such a cool unit. You can see they're going to be ripping some fat shots into the Marauders here. Marauders going to get broken up, and now we see some Horsemen coming in for Norsca, as well as some Marauder Spear units, but the Dark Elves might actually be able to capture this objective, and Blackheart Corsairs will dominate basic Marauders in combat. The Chaos Marauders, whatever variant, Norscan ones are the best ones because they have the rage mechanic compared to the Warriors of Chaos and some of the other factions. Although if you're getting into God-specific stuff, there can be different advantages because of all the nuances, but just like generic Marauders. But Blackheart Corsairs were basically born and bred to deal with Marauder units, right? Anti-infantry, high armor themselves, good just combat stats across the board, and yeah, they will be able to dominate the Marauders. And the same kind of goes for the Corsair handbows. They don't have the bonus versus infantry, but they still have armor and good enough stats to fight off Marauder units. And it looks like this objective, man, that was so close to flipping. My goodness, that was really, really close. Now we get a Manticore coming in, and I believe this is a Manticore belonging to the old forces of Norsca. So it looks like they have gotten the memo. And you see what I'm saying about the Manticore? It comes in, there's a fight, and then suddenly it's not a fight anymore because the terror route is active. But the Dark Elves are really catching up on points. This is going to be a real knockdown, drag-out game, it looks like. In the backfield, Dark Elves calling in some Bleak Swords and some Corsair units to kind of stabilize their different points. As far as Norsca goes, it looks like they're going to be consolidating their efforts on objective number 1. Oh man, it did flip to the Dark Elves. Like every moment of objectives being flipped in a close game like this just makes a world of difference. So we could have the dreaded Manticore Duel of Fates. Looks like Lokhir Felheart was unsummoned as well. He's pretty much on death's bed. Either that or he was killed, but I would wager he was unsummoned. Looking at the leadership here of the Sisters, yeah, it looks like he was unsummoned because they don't see any penalties or things like that. Crows of Cain chasing down the Marauder Horsemen, and we do see the Manticore up in the sky going after these Horsemen as well and screening them back. Over here we see some Norscan champions, or basic Marauders I suppose, trying to move over to the objective, but I don't think they know that the Dark Elves are hiding in the trees. So the Blackheart Corsairs looking like they're quite ready to ambush them, although I suppose the element of surprise has been partially ruined by the Blackheart Corsairs. They're shooting those bows out of the tree line. And now we have a little bit of a scrap. So both players trying to consolidate. Looking at the value, we do see a big lead for House Cat of War, which I wonder where all the healing is coming into play, because I feel like the armies on the battlefield are pretty heavily favored for the forces of the Dark Elves right now, but maybe House Cat have been saving up to do a little bit of summoning. It's hard to say. Feral Manticore on its way back across. The Dark Elves pretty comfortable, and when the battle devolves into this type of a situation, their hit and run mobility is going to be very, very strong. I guess Norsca could call in like Beast of Tashnar or some sort of a Hound unit to take down Dark Riders, but what's really cool about Dark Elves is they have really good mobility protection, so they can use either their Cold One Knights or their Dark Riders to defend against Hound units, and Dark Riders will do very well against Hound type units. They have good combat stats, 31, 25, charge bonus, which is pretty respectable as well, and it looks like they're going to be charging in to try and buffer off those Marauders. But Norsca with a bit of a resurgence here. We see a big Norscan army coming in. Marauders, more Marauders, as well as some Norscan Ice Wolves, which most likely are going to be trying to shut down these different range pieces. But we'll have to see if they're going to be able to get through. And we do have the Sisters of Singing Doom in tandem with the Blackheart Corsairs here. So I have a feeling this frontline engagement for the basic Marauders is not going to go well. And when they get a little bit beat up by the Sisters here, they're also going to get terror-rotted. Looks like the Dark Elf Manticore is also helping out. Or no, that's the Chaos Manticore. Okay. He's coming into party, but the problem with the Chaos Manticore here is that the Sisters of Singing Doom are a unit that cause terror, therefore they're actually immune to terror routes, so they're going to be very resilient against the rear charging of the Manticore and some of those other tricks and traps. Crows of Cain moving in. Crows of Cain, very solid unit. They do have regeneration, so they're able to move in and trying to intercept the Marauders, but it looks like Norsca might have a decent chance of getting this one back. Really, really nice play here by House God of War. He flanks in on the side with the Beast of Tashnar and gets a complete flank collapse here on the Blackheart Corsairs. And now these Marauders might be able to get through. The Sisters of Singing Doom really anchoring this position to the best of their abilities, but Norsca probably going to be moving in here and grabbing objective number 2 as the repeater crossbows continue to try and put in supporting fire wherever they can. Do the Dark Elves rotate over here for kind of a little bit of a theft on one? I don't know. Yeah, Norsca looks like they were able to muscle this objective. Here we see the Sisters pulling back to the objective point, which is going to be a very good play. Obviously, you want to have that capture weight fighting on the point, so then it can prevent your opponent from ninjaing while more Blackheart Corsairs arrive, which will trade pretty favorably with most of these units. Looks like the Dark Elves do stabilize the point, and it's really, really getting to the situation where Norsca would need a triple cap. Once again, pretty nice play here with the Hounds. The Beast of Tashnar bouncing out, going after the Dark Rider repeater crossbows. They're going to be forced back and pretty much going to be useless until they can get some Dark Rider support. Looking around the battlefield, I think that Dark Elves is mostly going to be calling in infantry to try and maintain the objectives. Norsca might be able to muscle this one with their Manticore and just mass amounts of troops here, and it looks like another unit of Marauder Champions was called in. This is big. Marauder Champions on this point. These guys are heavy hitters, and they're going to be able to bully the Corsair units away, as they do. And Norsca looks like they are going to flip this point. Let's take a look. Dark Elves still own it. No, they actually still have the 2 units. Marauder Champions definitely need to get back on that point with the Skin Wolves and start fighting. Although it looks like they're going to be running some interference against the Corsair Handbows, as Norsca has a massive wave of units coming. Trolls, Hounds, more Marauders, as well as some Marauder Horsemen. But guys, this could definitely be a triple cap situation. On the far side of the map, we do see these repeater crossbows running the gauntlet here, as they do run into some of the Corsair Handbows. What good awareness, right? Like, he knows he's got some random unit over here that can intercept the Beast of Tashnar, but even still, the Dark Riders do get broken and routed. This objective being held on to by the Dark Elves. Dark Elves aren't really a low leadership faction. They certainly have some good staying power in terms of their armor, and also, you know, the Sisters and those kind of, you know, usually religious fanatic units in this game have pretty good leadership, right? They're just fanatical type units. It doesn't have to be religion even, whatever, right? But the Sisters of Singing Doom certainly going to be holding it down here, getting routes on those units, and I think Norsca will flip this, but guys, it's probably too late. We have the Helm's Deep coming in from Norsca. The Dark Elves going to be heading over here, Blackheart Corsairs, as well as the Sisters of Slaughter. And ladies and gentlemen, I do not think he has enough time, so we'll do a little bit of fast forwarding. The elite Dark Elf Sisters, as well as the Witch Elves, holding that point very well. And the Dark Elves get the W by falling back onto the back point. Man, what a great scrap. I really thought the Dark Elves, like, seeing that initial opening, I was like, oh, this game's over. Like, he just had, like, 2 of his big expensive centerpieces, like, absolutely karate chops, but really good aggression, really cool showcase of those units, which normally don't get a ton of love. And honestly, considering that they got roasted, not bad value on these ones. And Lokhir Felheart, you know, pretty much paid for himself, which wasn't bad. Wolfric did very good. Seafang is such a good ability. Shades, 1,000 value each, pretty good. And Sisters of Singing Doom at 1,500. Dreaded Dread Knights at about 1,000. Yeah, the value is spread pretty evenly across the whole army. Corsair Handbows, obviously really, really good here. Each of those getting about 300-400 more value than they cost. And for the Norscan army, Marauder Champions did a respectable amount of damage and also held the objectives. But man, oh man, that was a strange game. I just kept looking and I was like, how are the Dark Elves behind so far in value but still in this? But I guess Lokhir does have healing, and they were able to hold the objectives for long periods of time towards the end there that got the job done. GG, well played. See you guys next time. That's going to be it for tonight, and that is all. Take care.